Hashem Spasai Tivtach, Ufia Gitil Sacha. We're now in the fourth parak of Nechemiah. In this parak, we have the ultimate experience in Jewish history, which is anti-Semitism. And that anti-Semitism and that idea of being surrounded. Here, Sanballat Tuvia, the Aravim, the Ammonim, and now the Ashdodim, which means that now we're on all four sides, we're surrounded. And we're surrounded by our enemies that see that we're building up and they don't want us to come up, they want us to go down. And they do what anti-Semites do, which is first, they try, they're aware of what we're doing, they try to mock us, and ultimately they try to attack us. And they beat their chests and say that they are going to do something in secret and that we'll never know where and when and how. Don't we know it? With the underground tunnel system. And attacks could come at any moment. It could come during the day. It could come down at night. And these people that are traumatized people, they experience the siege of Yerushalayim. They experience the difficulties and the destructions. These are very raw, emotionally people that are just doing their best to build up Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash. And what is going on here? And they're feeling so low about it. And so what do when they hear this, La'asos Toa, that the Goyim want to do Toa? Don't read it Toa, don't read it confusion, but Shoah, Holocaust and devastation. And so what do? But Nitzpalel El Hashem. And so what does Nechemiah do? Nechemiah, who is the premier leader, he is not the spiritual leader. Remember, he's the physical leader. But they're in Yahadus, in Jewish history, we have our Yehoshuas. We don't have people that are just political. We don't believe in the separation of church and state. This is our leader, and what does he do? Initially, he davens to Hashem. He learned from his forefather, from Yaakov Avinu, what did he do when he was faced with his enemy? He did Ladoron, Latfila, Ulamachama. He prepared for war. He davens, and he tries to come up with a political plan. And here too, what does Nechemiah do? He says, Bayomer, and he listens to the people, and he sees what's happening, and he listens to the people. And what do they say? We can't build anymore. It's too hard for us. Now, is it too physically hard? What 5 minutes ago it wasn't hard enough for you? What's going on here? But that shows the emotionality. How much when we're in emotional pain, what happens to us is that we are tapped out, we're maxed out, we cannot do it. And so here they can't. Now everything's too hard for them. Now it's too hard. Bamru, and they said, we don't know when our enemies are going to come. They're going to come at any moment. We can't handle this. It's too much. We can't work anymore, and we have to cease to work. And 10 times they keep on coming and telling us that there's going to be an attack on us, and it's just very difficult. Is it really 10 times? It's not really 10 times, it's just a lot of times. And it's very difficult. And so what does he do after he davens Nechemiah? He then places undercover at all places. You're going to go undercover, I'm going to go undercover. You think that you could scare us with the tunnels, we're going to scare you even more. And so he puts behind the walls people, but he puts them, everyone stops, and behind the walls, everyone is now grouped in families with their swords, their spears, and their bows. Why is that significant? It's significant because at first they need the emotional support. They need the emotional comfort. They need to be all together. They need to be with their family. They need to all be behind in one place because, again, number one, it's just practically. Number two, it is, because they all speak the same language. Number two is because that is the way of, the way of a Jew is achdus, and he's starting to unite them together, and that's the deeper message. The deeper message is you come with your mishpacha. You're all mishpacha. We're all together in this, and we're going to protect. And he arms them. We don't go just to the slaughterhouse. We go with strength. And that's what he's saying. Do not be afraid, he says to the people. Do not be afraid. Why? Because you have to remember, number one is Hashem Hagadol Hanora. Hashem is going to fight for you. That is what a Jew, number one, believes, is that Hashem is in the forefront of our war. He will protect us. And then, practically speaking, fight for your families. We know from the South and the Confederacy, we know that was their advantage over the North, that they were able to fight for their homes, and that really gave them that extra juice. But here's what you're fighting for. Now, it's interesting because in many ways, we have in other places in Tanakh that you're not supposed to. Don't think about that when you go to war. Don't think about that. Think about just think about what you're fighting, so it doesn't distract you. Because it says anyone that just got married, you could go home. Anyone who's thinking about your vineyard, go home. And now he's saying think about your family. But this is the collective family, because when a Jew is in the army, and it's so interesting because this point was said by Rabbi Rosner, whose children actually have been or are currently in the army, I'm not really sure. But the idea is that, and that's the Jew. The Jew, when he enters into the army, he's in the collective, it's for all the people. Think about your families, think about what you're fighting for, think about the collective Jewish people, that's what you're fighting for. And so when the enemies heard that we know exactly what's happening, that Hashem is destroying their plan, and we're all able to go back to the wall, and each one resumes their work. And so far we're successful because now we are a strong presence, and we are not going to go down without a fight. And so the enemies feel that, and now they back away. And so we go back to work. But how do we go back to work? Interesting. So some people are going to, everyone has their job, like stay in your lane. This is just what it is. Some of them go back to war. Some of them with their spears and their shields and their bows and their armor, and the leaders are behind them. And then there are people that are the builders. And the builders, they would do their work with one hand, and they always are carrying a weapon in the other. And when you've been to Israel and you see that the soldiers are carrying their weapon wherever they go, but trying to function in a normal life, it's very reminiscent of that. So they're building with one hand, but they always have their hands on their weapon. And the builders, there's also a horn blower, and that person who's blowing the shofar stays with Nechemiah, and he says, listen, if there's ever anything, if there's an emergency, I'm going to call, and then you're all guys are going to come back together. Just that message. If there's an emergency, we all come back together. And he says to the princes and to the noblemen and to all the rest of the people, he gives, it's, again, this is it's kind of like the army mentality. He speaks to the generals and the officers, all the way down to the privates. There's so much work to do, and we have to be, and we are, we can separate out from each other, and that's okay. But if you hear the horn, then you gather back together. And why? Because Hashem yilachem lanu. We can do this because Hashem is on top of this war. But we are strong, and so we worked. And half of the spears, and what would they do? They would work, and the day is ma'olos hashachar, from dawn until you saw the stars. This is there are halachic ramifications of this, very interestingly enough. This is the way that a day is defined because it is written this way, that this was their day. They did not sleep at night. They basically worked through, from dusk until dawn, and then they were on mishmar, they were on protection, and also the idea is that gam ba'isa hi amarti la'am ish la'aro yalinu b'tzach Yerushalayim, stay in Yerushalayim, sleep in Yerushalayim. V'hayu lanu halayla mishmar, because we need to take watch, and everyone is safer in being here. V'hayom melachama, and during the day melacha, you do work. Ve'ein ani v'achai v'narai v'anshei mishmar asher acharai in anachnu poshtim begadenu ishal chol hamayim. And here we never took off our clothing, and we had our weapon always with us, and our water. And this is another interesting idea, that's where we get the idea of having Nagel Wasser by our bed, that the water should be by our bed, and so that we don't have to move and to get up and to get around. And what you see from here is you see that, it's kind of reminiscent of Yehoshua, when he blew the shofar and all the walls came tumbling down. Here, there's this idea that if I blow the shofar, that means that we have to go and to build up. We we are building up the walls, but essentially we are coming together ba'achdus. Now the Gemara talks about why is it? How could it be? Like, these people are Shiva Sion, they're doing good things. Like, why is it that they're experiencing such disarray? It's so unfair. And the answer really is that this is what Nechemiah is trying to repair, because in society right now, the rich, the poor, they're not treating the poor well. They're not treating each other exactly how they should, possibly because it's just difficult conditions, but possibly because they just aren't. And Yoshua is saying, Nechemiah is saying, you can't do this, because when you do, Hashem then, if you're going to not listen to the cries of the poor people, the Gemara talks about, then Hashem says, I'm going to send you crying. And we have to learn from that. We have to learn how to be. We have to learn the idea of achdus. We have to learn the idea that when we're in danger of who is in the front of us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we have to have bitachon, but then we have to do our hishtadlus. And here the people are doing hishtadlus. And what kind of hishtadlus? They're holding onto their weapons, and they're building. And they're doing it ba'achdus. They're doing it mishpachosam. They're doing it with their families all together. But it's not just their initial families, and not just their immediate family, but their collective family. What we do for Klal Yisrael. And we see this is anti-Semitism. This is what happens in our lives. And in Mir Tashem, we should never have this situation. But if we do, we learn from Yaakov, we learn from Yoshua, we learn from Nechemiah that we have to do our part in the war against our enemies. But ultimately, it is HaKadosh Baruch Hu who fights the war. But he sees our hishtadlus. And what is our hishtadlus? Our hishtadlus is either in the mitzvos and the Torah and the things that we do. But on a practical level, we fight, we be strong, we show strength, we don't show weakness, and in that way, in that zechus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saves us and fights our battles for us.